Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. Prosperity. This is a bizarre concept for a lot of people, especially under the current situation with COVID 19. However, COVID 19, as all things, will pass in time. In the meantime, however, we have an interesting situation on our hands. Because the entire world is at the same spot, as in virtually every government is looking at the problem of COVID-19 as a global problem. Therefore, the order of things being done are changing. Access to certain materials are changing, and there will be things that are going to get rough. Okay, but when we talk about prosperity, it always concerned me. Uh, Pretty much always, but that's another issue. Anyway, prosperity itself, as it turns out, is very much a mindset. Okay, now, there's those of you that are going to be going, some of you are on one end of the scale saying, it's my birthright to have all the good things in life. On the other end, you've got people going, it's my birthright, it's my lot in life, not my birthright, but my lot in life to have to struggle day in and day out. But I got looking at it and I'm thinking, what is it that makes the difference? Because some of the people that are following the story of rags to riches, in other words, they were really struggling and got to the top. Okay, and there's others that have gotten to the top or started at the top, okay, because of things that their ancestors did, and ended up losing it all and getting to the bottom. So obviously, the lines between the so-called lower class and the upper class are shifting constantly. Now, with the way everything's going, people have been talking about the new world order and thinking that's a government. That they're talking about a government, and many of them really are. But the reality of it is, the new world order, in all fairness, is more the new order of the world, meaning we are starting in a brand new world. The world that was before COVID is over. Now, how do we get from the thought of struggle to the thought of success? Well, the first thing you have to look at, or that it would be advisable to look at, now understand, this is simply my opinion. This is based on, 47 years now of watching society, of working with clients, both on the personal and the professional side. Roughly speaking, about 30% of my clients are business. Okay, now, so let's get started with the mindset thing. Prosperity is a mindset. Whether you believe you will be successful or you believe you won't, okay, or whether you believe you'll stay successful or you believe you won't, either way, you are going to inevitably prove yourself correct. Now, there are lots of times where there are mitigating circumstances that are essentially beyond your control. Okay, many times you'll turn to somebody that has claimed to be in a position higher than you, for instance, have more knowledge than you. I made the mistake years ago of believing that all financial advisors were actually working for the individual they were advising. For me personally, I ended up going bankrupt twice on the guidance of professional financial advisors. Okay, in both cases, when I came to understand the reality behind it, it turns out they were both wrong. Now, these were people that were recommended by other people as saying, these are very intelligent people, follow what they're telling you. At the time, I was literally too young, in as much as I had not acquired the insight I've got now. The reality of it is, Your mindset is the key factor. Okay, so that's where we start. Now, how do we get from where you're standing to up here? And we'll start with, with this one, I'm going to start with simply how do you get from struggling to successful? Okay, we'll deal with what causes the collapse after on another video. But here's what you start with. Now, the way I came to understand it is the formula for success, for personal success, is simple. Success equals belief plus focused effort. Now, again, you are the only person that can actually be successful for you. It is up to you to decide what you can do or what you desire to do. What do you consider success? Many people that I've talked to over the years have their eyes set on a happy home. Now, this is both male and female. It is not limited to one gender or the other. Male or female or other. Doesn't matter. Many people look at success going, I've got a roof over my head, I've got food on my table, and I'm happy with the way my house looks. Like, I'm personally happy. And that is fantastic. Other people look at it and go, I have to have a major corporation that stands out across the global scale, the global backdrop. That's success. I have to have $10 billion in the account. That means success. Other people say, I don't really care whether I've got $1 in my pocket or not. I'm happy. I remember speaking to one gentleman that lived on the street, and he was there quite literally by choice. Long story short, the man showed me his bank account, his bank book. Don't ask me why, I have no idea why. But it did bring a point home. He was living on the street, okay, with a high six-figure bank account. Now, for him, that was absolute prosperity. Now, not everybody on the street, as a matter of fact, quite frankly, contrary to popular belief, most people on the street are not there because they desire to be there. So much as many of them have found themselves in untenable situations where they did not know how to get around it. And of course, there's all kinds of things that go with that, but I'm going to do my best to stay focused on this. Prosperity itself is a mindset. So, where do we start? Well, the first thing that you start with, or at least one of the first one is can we try English? The first one is decide whether or not you are truly content in your heart with where your life is. If the answer is no, then it's time to start modifying it. Okay, now you can do this. There is no question. You can do it. The question is, are you willing to put the effort into it? And much more importantly, are you willing to take responsibility for your own actions? Those are the real critical factors. Now, there is a belief out there that thinking is as bad as doing. Well, I will tell you, if it's as bad as doing, then thinking has got to, by definition, or by comparison, thinking has to be as good as doing. And if that were the case, then I'd already be well off and above the poverty line, etc., etc. Okay, I'm sure that if thinking was as good as doing, there's a lot of people that are struggling today. You may be one of them, going, I'm already wealthy. Well, I will tell you an example of wealth that came very clear in 2003. We had a forest fire here in Kelowna, BC, with only approximately, and if I recall the numbers correctly, about 100,000 people. We evacuated 1/3 of the city because of the fire. But what I found was the people that had a lot of money were totally lost on what to do with it, with the situation when the fire broke out. The people that didn't have a lot of money We're pitching together and really working well, helping each other get through it. Okay, I've heard people tell me they've gone to so-called third world countries where people are very happy. They're struggling, they're having trouble with food, the whole 9 yards, but they're very happy. Now, it got me thinking, what is, who are really the wealthy people? The ones with a lot of money or the ones that are happy here? And, even for me, it's a question of how am I going to deal with the way I look at the world and how am I going to make that work? How am I going to work with it? Not so much make it work. I've talked about energy before, and I will be talking about it again. But it boils down to the issue of getting the energy, in this case, in your mind first, getting it to turn around so it works the way that you desire it to. Now, the reality is, when you're looking at the way that prosperity works, it starts with a thought. I'm not content with the way things are. Works its way down to the emotional drive, looking for something to help you feel better, help you feel more prosperous. Then it works its way down into the logical side of the brain, working out a plan, which quite often requires talking to other people that have done it successfully, working out a plan, and then finding a way to implement it. Then it comes to the physical side of it. That's where you take that plan that you now have on paper or on computer and you start implementing it one step at a time. Now, I've mentioned before about the imperative impact of putting a list together. So we get the thought process in place. Now, there is something that has to happen here. At this point, it's all thought, but when it gets down into the logical side, that's where communication comes in. It goes through the emotional, which will get some communication. But when it gets into the logical side of thinking, that's when you start doing the planning. That's when you start talking about it. And this is where the impact of language becomes critical. Because the moment you take something from a thought and you vocalize it, you're giving that thought form. Now, pretty much, it's pretty concise that the human race, and many others for that matter, do not have full control over telepathic communication. Therefore, you have to rely on verbal or physical expression. So, when we're talking about language, and I've got a number of videos out with different words that are very self-limiting, very debilitating. Okay, absolutely look them up. Okay, or watch for them to come out. A few of the words that I'm referring to are can't, if, impossible, try, want, need, always, never. Now, there are a few others, okay, and I will be doing videos on all of them. The important factor is what you say will directly impact how your prosperity level climbs, or how it stabilizes where you desire it to be. I am not the one to tell you what is success. Okay, for some people, it really does boil down to simply getting an idea that I accomplished a goal. Now I'm successful. Okay, I was quite pleased when I got the first of a series of novels written. Okay, and in publication. For me, that was a very long journey, and I'm still working on it because I haven't completed it. But success comes to those not. Let's put it this way: success does not come to those who wait. Procrastination is a critical problem and has accomplished virtually nothing in life. However, prosperity is a matter of how you think about you, how you think about the boundaries that are in the world around you. Now, understand, when I talk about the boundaries, understand if there is a law in place, it is best if you follow it. Whether you agree with the law or not, the reality is if you break the law, you will have other problems to deal with. That's the way it works. Okay, so the idea of prosperity itself is your mindset. What do you consider success? What are you aiming at? Okay, and I've talked on a number of things about that, but when we talk about it, let's, in a very, very brief overview, get your mind moved from it being impossible to change, regardless of the world you're living in right now. Okay, understand you are the only one that can be successful for you. You're the only one that can change your level of prosperity. Okay, the idea of money making you prosperous can be categorically, shut down in a number of ways. It can just be blatantly shut down. From my understanding, when people make a windfall, whether it is by the unfortunate fact of a loved one passing away and they end up with an inheritance, they win a lottery, they go into a lawsuit of whatever form, okay, and they end up with a major chunk of money all of a sudden in their hands. Now, understand, major chunk of money for me, $2,000 would be a pretty big chunk of money. For you, it may be more. But when it comes to the real big numbers, like when we're talking about the $1 million lotteries, that sort of thing, more often than not, what happens is within 2 or 3 years, the person that has made that lottery win. Okay, and I might be off on the statistics on it, but from what I understand, virtually everybody that gets that kind of prosperity level is in worse shape 3 years later than what they were before they had that sudden windfall. So you take the idea. This is what I'm aiming for. Okay, look at how you're speaking. Take a look at the words that you're using. They say that honey will get you will get you more flies than vinegar. That came out really poorly. Okay, the same applies to the idea of getting angry does not really accomplish much, because the second you start to get angry, and I'm guilty of it myself. Okay, the moment you get angry, the people you're angry with essentially stop listening. They won't stop hearing you, but they will stop listening. And there is a very big difference between those. But getting mad doesn't help. It getting now they talk about jealousy and envy and that sort of thing. Jealousy is very counterproductive. Envy, to my understanding and the way I look at envy, is I see something somebody else has that I would like. I'm going to find a way to emulate that. I'm not going to find a way to take it away from them, because taking it from them will not make anybody better. You cannot essentially become successful, like truly successful, by making somebody else feel worse. And again, language comes into play very strongly. When you're looking at the way you talk, okay, when you look at the words you're using, you'll find if you listen to my videos, or more to the point, when you listen to my videos, if you listen to them means you may not. That gives you the possibility, and therefore the reality that you didn't listen. So when you listen to my videos, you'll find I will say certain words, and I'll come back and correct them. Like right off the bat, I'll cut my thought off and come back and correct the word. A primary one I find myself doing a lot is when I say can't. Because the reality is there's very little on the planet that you cannot do. There's a whole lot that I would recommend against. But prosperity boils down to your mindset. So you take it from your mindset, get it into where you're starting to plan it, where you're planning how you're going to do it. Talk to the people that have done it successfully before. For instance, when you desire to make a lot of money, don't talk to somebody that's on the street that is down to the last penny. No matter what their idea, when they're still sitting on the street and struggling, they're not the people that know how to make millions. Okay, so talk to the people that have been successful at it. talk to the people, plan the ideas out on paper, and see if they match. If the plan you're working with is working, okay, then what you end up with is a nice little situation where one step at a time, and this is where the idea of putting it on paper, broken down into goals of 15 minutes to half an hour each, will enable you to get your goals accomplished and attain the level of prosperity you personally desire. Now, this is not going to be a real quick transition. Understand, wherever your lot in life right now is, it likely did not take place overnight. It's going to take a while to get it turned around. One step at a time. Now, they say the first step is always the hardest. The first step is the easiest. Everybody does it. It's the third step that becomes the hard one. But pulling yourself out of the situation you're in, okay, is kind of like a plane. Okay, if you're flying along and you go into a nosedive, okay, any pilot can tell you if you go into and that's whether they're physical pilots or video pilots. You go into a nosedive, you're not going to come out of the nosedive without slowing your descent first, and then deliberately finding a new way to climb back up. Same thing applies to prosperity. Okay, whatever your level of income is, I have talked about it before, but when we look at the financial side, and understand the financial side simply is what we use. It's a barter system that is used to keep a roof over your head, keep food on your table, okay, and obviously clothes on your back. Now, it is a mindset. It really is. But one tool that works very well is whatever you require to run your household, rent, utilities, food, insurance, whatever that number is, that's the first number we start with. And on a sheet of paper, wherever you work on your finances, you literally write, I have legally attained a minimum of X number of dollars by, in this case, we'll say May 31st at 1 minute to midnight. Now, change that every month when we get into June, but start there. It gives you a goal. Again, it puts you in a position where you can see it change. As I said, prosperity is a mindset, regardless of where you are in life. How you got where you are currently really is not the critical question. The critical question at this stage is, where do you go from here? How do you get from this point to this point? And again, you may have your idea of success may be a well-run house. Okay, that is a fantastic goal. And anybody that has a household, whether they are living on their own or have other people living with them, running a successful household is challenging. Not impossible. Running a successful corporation or a successful country is precisely the same set of problems. You get extra influences, yes, but the reality is your mindset is what will actually change that. And the reality is it won't happen in one step. You are likely to try multiple times, not get to where you want, and have to start over. Have you ever driven down a road, taken a turn, and found out you came to a dead-end road and had to turn around and go back? That's where you are right now. COVID-19 has taken everybody's world and gone, let's dump it on a deer, and now see who can thrive. Now, people will thrive. You will find strength in people you never knew had it. You may find strength in yourself in ways that you never knew. The key to prosperity, on top of the mindset, is persistent effort. Okay, if you can have the biggest dreams on the planet, if you do not put the effort into it, the odds of you attaining it, and much more importantly, the odds of you maintaining it, are extremely limited. Okay, now I'm going to leave you with that thought for the moment. I do encourage you very strongly to look at the other videos that I've got already up regarding the use of language, the use of lists. Go back through, I've spread a lot of information out over a lot of them. For the moment, however, I'm going to leave you with this thought. Take care of each other and yourselves, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.